thank you everyone for coming. I'm Neeraj Murarka, CTO of Royse Networks. We started the company in 2014 in Vancouver, Canada. And originally we were interested in foreign remittance, so we actually have developed quite a bit of expertise with the Ripple protocol. So we did that for about a year in 2014 and also in 2015, and then we decided to move the company to Singapore. So our headquarters are actually in Singapore now. And we've been doing enterprise application development in Singapore, as you can see with this slide. And I'm going to kind of try to skip past the slides to go to the cool stuff pretty quickly. But we've got partnerships with KPMG, Microsoft, British Telecom. We've done some project work with Temenos, building a system that connects the blockchain to Temenos, which is one of the core banking systems. And we've done a lot of work with Ethereum and obviously Ripple. We were chosen as a tech pioneer for the World Economic Forum in 2017. And one of the really big accomplishments we've had recently is we built a KYC enterprise system for 3 banks in Asia, MUFG, OCBC, and HSBC. So I'm going to talk now about the decentralized internet ecosystem. We're here talking about ICOs and blockchain. So I wanted to give a little bit of background on the engineering side. We've got applications like Status, which is kind of like a WeChat or a WhatsApp for the decentralized environments. But those decentralized applications, they require the proper development stack, the technologies that engineers need to build a product. So for example, if you're using a centralized environment, you might be using Windows or Mac, which is your operating system. The decentralized equivalent is Ethereum, which has its own blockchain currency called Ethereum, ETH. And then there's obviously Bitcoin, which is on another blockchain. You need file storage. Filecoin is one of the ICOs that happened recently. There's also storage, which is one of my favorites. And then there's CFcoin. It's sort of like an AWS S3 or a Dropbox for the decentralized internet. So if you're building a software, you need a place to store files. You've got to store them somewhere. Decentralized Filecoin or SIA would be one of those. What's really missing in this whole package is a database. Database is actually really fundamental to software development. It's pretty difficult for me to imagine a point in my career where I wrote software that didn't need a database. So, if you're building any kind of application, whether it's enterprise banking software, security software, even video games, you're going to need a database. So currently, people use SQL Server, Oracle, on the so-called Web 2.0. The Web 3.0 decentralized result database is what we're building here. So this is really a big missing piece of decentralized internet ecosystem. I'm going to skip past this. Basically, you've got the past, the present, and the future. So really the 3 things that we're focusing on for our database is performance, reliability, and scalability. Performance, databases, you have to kind of predict how big your database needs to be ahead of time, and if you're really successful, your database could crash, and then that looks really, really bad. A lot of companies have actually been a victim of their own success. So you really need to make sure there's a database that's going to perform when you need it. Reliability, well, we've heard about things like AWS going down or Rackspace going down or whatever. Reliability is really important. Often your servers will crash when you need them the most, and having reliability is critical. And then scalability, which is being able to grow with your customers. So the database that we've actually built is using decentralized technology, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, but we're going to be doing an ICO in the next 3 months, and the ICO is really actually critical to driving the database because it's driven by a crypto economy. So if you're ever looking at an ICO, you need to understand that there's a token behind it, and the token has to have some sort of utility. It has to have some purpose. Without naming any companies, there's a lot of companies that are kind of using the ICO environment as a way to do sort of general purpose fundraising, which is a bit of a problem because ultimately what are you actually buying? You're buying a token. Well, the token's not really being used for anything. You've got to question what it is you're buying. The token that we're actually having here is fundamental for using the database. It's the currency used to utilize the database. It's also the currency that the producers or the farmers that participate in the database earn. So this database is not run by any big company. It's actually run by people that have their own machines. If you want to participate in the network, you can use it. But if you want to provide their own resources to the network, you add the machines to it, and then you earn this token. It's like basically like mining currency. So the 3 kind of technologies we're using, which is swarming, consensus, and partitioning. You've probably heard of consensus. You've heard of proof of work in Bitcoin. Consensus basically is a really important concept. If you have a bunch of machines that are not centralized, there has to be some mechanism for them all to agree on what's really going on, to have some sort of authority without having a central authority. Consensus is what's there, and we're implementing consensus using swarming. So I'm going to skip past all these slides that I drew in an airplane. Yeah, so our team, you know, we've got a great team. My CEOs, Disney, Microsoft, Iron Startups, alumni, UCLA. I've done work for Google. I'm a pilot. I've done work for Lufthansa, and I wrote the Zero blog for Android. And we got Slack, if you want to look at our development side, and then GitHub, and we also have Twitter and Telegram. But what I'm going to get into now is show you the simulator. Let's see. All right, so the blockchain, if you look at Bitcoin blockchain, it's actually one big network, and every machine on the blockchain has the exact same copy of the data. There's a real problem with that. If you're storing data onto this blockchain, every single machine has to have a copy of your data. If there's 6 billion people using this network, every machine on the network has to store the data from every one of those 6 billion people. That's not going to scale. It's not sustainable. So you can't really use the blockchain as a database. So what we're actually building is something called a swarming database, which means that instead of having all the data stored on every machine, we break the data up into fragments, and we actually put the data into these mini swarms. Think of them like swarms of bees. Each swarm has some of your data, and all the swarms collectively have all your data. So within a swarm, you're looking at this right now. This is a single swarm, and you can see that there's stuff going on. All these nodes actually have an exact same copy of a part of your data. Now, if 10 of these nodes were to just go down spontaneously, there's still 10 nodes running. They have all your data. It's all there. It's not going anywhere. So statistically speaking, your data is never going to go away, because no swarm is ever going to die. The swarms are spread out all over the world. People ask us, well, what happens if an entire swarm goes down? And I say, well, a swarm's going to have 100 nodes or more on it. The only way that 100 random machines all over the world are going to go down simultaneously is if you have a solar flare, or if the planet gets hit by a massive comet. And if that happens, data is probably not required. So yeah, so right now you can see here that our swarm has 1,000 megabytes of space, and within it, 542 megabytes are being used. So there's quite a bit of space. And you can see each machine is showing how much data they're actually individually storing. So as soon as a swarm gets to a point where it's reaching saturation, the data will get thrown into another swarm, and it will automatically grow or contract automatically. So this database is really the main product that we're building out, and it's not just for enterprise, it's actually for distributed application developers.
Password to continue.
Siri. So yeah, I mean, the reason this is really important, we're doing a token sale, but more important to me, we're actually building this database initially. Our initial adopter is going to be distributed application developers, other companies that are doing token sales, ICOs. Any company that's either doing decentralized exchange, they're doing some sort of digital identity, anything that's decentralized, they need a database. They need a decentralized database. Luzel is that decentralized database that we're offering. We're already in the process of building out a product. We're going to have an API. The really nice thing about our database is it's going to be really easy to use. We don't want software developers to have to know all this stuff. They don't need to understand blockchain. They don't need to understand how this decentralized stuff works. All they need to do is use their existing database skills to use what we have here. So my goal really is, I go to a software developer and I tell them, use our database. It's a 5-minute learning curve. They can switch from what they're using to this. Very simple. And last thing I'm going to show you is a quick little slide, which I really love. It's basically the nice version of whatever I showed you earlier done by our artists. So here you can see the swarms, what we're going to be building up. With each of those little circles, and there's actually that big animated swarm, and each of these would be storing a part of your data, and they collectively kind of talk to each other, and this is your entire Luzel database network. And this would be your data chopped up into pieces. We love scientists. My shirt has 4 scientists' names on them. If you want one of these shirts, come to me and tell me what their last names are. And don't cheat.
How many do we need to know? Just 1 or?
Scientists? All 4. And the first guy is not called Marx. And that's about it. I got stickers as well on the table, so got some showing. That's it.
All right, thank you very much.